Hello there and welcome back to this Modern Front-End Development by Example course, where today we're going to be starting section 8, where we're going to be learning about the very basics of Docker. So as a whole, Docker, it isn't necessarily a technology that's easy to learn, and I definitely can't teach you it in this course. I can probably create a whole separate 10-hour course on Docker, and that probably wouldn't cover all of it. So the point of this, what we're doing here, is essentially just to sort of tell you that Docker exists. You could be aware of it, and then later on, as you start to get more sort of advanced as a developer, you can start to learn more about it, and that will definitely help in your development workflow. So anyway, without further ado, then I'll take a look at exactly what Docker is. So Docker, a virtual machine, so in order to understand what Docker is, we need to understand what a virtual machine is. So a virtual machine is an operating system that runs inside another operating system. We can run a virtual machine inside any operating system. For example, we can run a Windows operating system inside a Mac operating system. And that's sort of what a virtual machine is. So essentially, when we are running an instance of a Windows operating system inside a Mac operating system, or vice versa, that means that that is a virtual machine. So that's essentially how that works. Now, for the longest time, we did use virtual machines as developers, and that helped because oftentimes we ran into the problem that something worked on our computer, but then when we pushed it to the server or another developer's computer, we had the problem that it doesn't work. And most likely that happened because he just didn't have the correct dependencies installed, programs, maybe the file structure was incorrect on his machine, and so on, his or the server's machine. And that was actually a pretty big problem. So we solved that by using virtual machines. So we would run our application on a virtual machine, and then we can just deploy that virtual machine to a server or to another developer's machine, and then he can just run that virtual machine there and actually have access to the actual project. Essentially, for the longest time, we did that. But that came with a lot of its own problems, which Docker hopes to solve. So Docker is not a virtual machine. Docker is a container, which means that while it does bear resemblance to a virtual machine, it still shares many resources with the host operating system. So while a virtual machine is sort of its own thing completely, a container, it has some of its own stuff, like its own file system and things like that. But for a lot of stuff, it still just shares it with the host operating system. So that's actually the difference between a virtual machine and a container. What that allows for us to do is to have it run much faster, to have it be much smaller to send to a server or to somebody else. And then it also just allows for easier management. So working with it is just easier because, for example, with a virtual machine, unless you have to write custom code, for example, drop a file from your machine into the virtual machine, it's a little bit more complex than just using a container. You can just give it a command and it'll go ahead and do that. And it's just generally easier to manage. So essentially that is what Docker is. And now that we have that knowledge of what Docker actually is, let's go and actually install Docker. Alright, so here we are in Chrome. So downloading Docker is actually very, very simple. We can just go to Docker, search for it. There we go, official site, docker.com. Okay, so DockerCon is actually going on right now. And get Docker Community Edition, just click on that. And then get Docker CE from Docker Store. That's going to take you to the Docker Store. And then here you can select the actual Docker depending on which operating system you're on. So if you're on Windows, you're going to download this one. And so I'm going to download the Get Docker Community Edition for Mac. Okay, and then now you have to log in to download. Go ahead and create your own account. I think that's pretty simple. Just search Docker Create Account and create it there. And then go ahead and log in and download. So I'm going to go ahead and log in right now. Alright, there we go. So you can see after I've signed in, I can now just get Docker. And that's going to go install down here. There we go. So now it's installing. Now Docker is pretty big. After you've installed everything, it's probably going to be about 1.5 gigabytes or something like that on your machine. And then also there's going to be some libraries it's going to install also. And that's going to take up maybe 2 or 3 gigabytes as well. It's a pretty big thing. So yeah, even though it's downloading only 353 megabytes right now, it's still going to, after installed, it's going to be much, much more. So yeah, just something to note. Alright, and there we go. So it's installed. Downloaded, not installed. Now let's open this up. Alright, it's going to open Docker DMG. Let's give it a second to verify here. Alright, and there we go. Now we can just drag and drop Docker into applications. All right, and there we go. So now let me go ahead and actually open Docker here. We can just do search Docker. There we go. It's going to open that up. Give it a second. It's got to verify it again. All right, open this up. Okay, and there we go. You can see up here we get this cool little, whale. And you can see Docker is starting. Let's give it a second to start here, and then we should actually be good to go. And now we can go ahead and go to terminal. All right, there we go. And let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here so that you can see. All right, there we go. And now all we have to do is just do Docker. And there we go. So you can see now we got this list of commands that we can use. So Docker has been installed successfully and everything's working.